I guess some moments sneak up on you. The kind you know, deep down, will change everything, even before they happen. The cabin smelled like old cedar and rain-soaked earth, the kind of place we used to beg Mom and Dad to take us when we were kids. Now, years later, it was just the two of us, holed up here for the weekend under the excuse of one last trip before life gets busy. It sounded harmless enough when he suggested it. A quick escape, a little nostalgia. I said yes before. I could think too hard about why I hesitated. I leaned back against the worn kitchen counter, watching him wrestle with the stubborn fireplace. His dark hair kept falling into his eyes, and he huffed in frustration, flashing that crooked grin that had always undone me more than I cared to admit. He looked the same, and yet different. Stronger, maybe. Broader through the shoulders. The years softening nothing but sharpening everything else. "You're hopeless," I teased, tossing him a lighter from across the room. He caught it without looking, flashing a triumphant smirk that made my chest tighten. "Please. You need me to survive out here," he shot back easily, feeding the fire until a warm glow began to stretch across the cabin. "You'd be frozen solid without me." The firelight flickered in his eyes, and for a second I forgot to breathe. God, I hated how easily he got under my skin. How just being near him made the edges of the world feel less sharp, less lonely. I shoved my hands into the pockets of my hoodie, feigning casualness I definitely didn't feel. Yeah. "You're my hero," I said, the sarcasm in my voice paper-thin. He laughed, a low, genuine sound, and flopped onto the threadbare couch with a satisfied grunt. His socked feet dangled off the armrest, and he patted the space next to him without looking up. "Come on, before you catch hypothermia standing there." I rolled my eyes, but my body betrayed me, moving toward him as if drawn by some invisible thread. Sitting close, too close, my knee bumped his, and neither of us moved away. Outside, the rain tapped lightly against the windows, a soft, steady rhythm that somehow magnified the silence inside. I pulled the blanket off the back of the couch and draped it over us both, my fingers brushing his hand for just a second longer than necessary. He looked at me then, really looked. And something passed between us, unspoken but heavy, like a bridge creaking under the weight of two people standing at the edge. I told myself I imagined it. I told myself nothing had changed. But deep down, where all the carefully built walls cracked, I knew this weekend wasn't going to end the way it began. The thing about growing up with someone is that they know all your best parts and all the ones you try to hide. We weren't just twins. We were partners in crime. Matching scraped knees from climbing the oak tree in the backyard, endless summer, nights spent plotting how to stay up past bedtime, whispered conversations through the thin wall between our rooms. Somewhere along the way, he had become the one constant I could count on when everything else shifted and cracked. Even now, that easy connection was there, woven into every glance and unfinished sentence. "Remember that time you tried to start a fire by rubbing two sticks together?" he asked, voice thick with laughter, tossing another log onto the blaze. I snorted, stretching my legs out under the blanket. "I was 8, and you were no help. You sat there eating marshmallows like some smug little gremlin." He grinned wide enough to show his teeth. "Someone had to document your failures." "You were useless," I said, bumping my shoulder against his. The touchlight, familiar. But still, something about the contact lingered longer than it should have, thrumming through me like a live wire. "You're just mad because I was the cute twin," he teased, winking. "Still debatable," I muttered, trying to hide the smile tugging at my mouth. Inside, my heart tripped over itself like it always did when he looked at me like that, like I was the only thing in the world worth seeing. The storm outside picked up, the rain drumming harder against the roof. It was cozy in the cabin, but also drafty. The kind of place that didn't pretend to be anything more than it was. I could smell the damp, mossy scent of the woods through the cracks in the windows, feel the hum of the wild night just beyond the thin walls. A sudden gust of wind rattled the old pipes, and with a soft clang, the lights flickered once, then went out. "Well, that's fantastic," he said, voice breaking the dark with a forced cheeriness. "Welcome to 18th century living." I groaned, reaching for my phone and confirming what I already suspected. No signal, of course. He was quiet for a moment, and in the firelight, I saw his brows knit together. Despite his jokes, he didn't love the dark. Never had. Without thinking, I slid closer under the blanket, our thighs pressing together. He stiffened for half a second before relaxing into me, our shared body heat warming the chill that crept into the room. "Guess we're stuck with each other," I said lightly, but my voice sounded too soft, too careful. He turned his head, so close I could feel his breath ghost across my cheek. "Not the worst person to be stuck with," he murmured, almost like he didn't mean for me to hear it. I didn't trust my voice, so I just smiled tightly, looking away before my heart gave me away. My fingers itched to reach for him, to close the tiny, impossible distance between us, but I stayed perfectly still, counting the beats of my pulse like a prayer. We busied ourselves by setting out a few battered candles we found in the kitchen, drawers laughing when one sputtered out the moment we lit it. His hand brushed mine in the dark more than once, accidentally maybe, but neither of us pulled away quickly. Later, as we dug through our backpacks for extra layers, he made a discovery that shifted the night even further. "You're kidding," he said, holding up one sleeping bag. Singular. I blinked, dumbfounded. "I packed two. I swear I packed two," he snorted. "Well, unless you're hiding another one in your hoodie, looks like we're sharing." My throat went dry. "It's not a big deal," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "We've shared worse." "Yeah," he said, smiling crookedly. "We survived sharing a womb. I think we'll manage a sleeping bag." He said it lightly, but there was something in the way his eyes held mine, a flicker of something almost shy, almost questioning, that made the air feel heavier between us. Maybe it was the storm, maybe it was the cabin, maybe it was that stupid single sleeping bag, but somehow I knew tonight wasn't going to be as easy as pretending we were just two brothers. "Riding out a storm?" The fire sputtered low, casting long, dancing shadows across the cabin walls. Outside, the rain had turned relentless, a steady roar that drowned out everything but the thud of my own heartbeat. The air inside had cooled considerably, and despite the extra layers we threw on, it wasn't enough. He pulled the lone sleeping bag open and glanced at me over his shoulder, an uncertain tilt to his head. "Well," he said, voice casual, "you getting in, or what?" I hesitated a moment too long, and he caught it. Of course he did. His eyebrows quirked up, playful, but questioning. I forced a laugh, hoping it would cover the tightness in my chest. Yeah, I muttered, towing off my socks and sliding in beside him. The bag wasn't made for two people, not two grown men with broad shoulders and tangled limbs. Every shift, every adjustment, pressed more of our bodies together. Our legs tangled accidentally. His arm brushed mine every time he moved. It was claustrophobic in the way that made it impossible to think straight. He laid back against the pillow, one arm folded behind his head, the other awkwardly pinned between us. His body was so close, so solid, his warmth seeping into me, steady and inescapable, comfortable, he asked, glancing at me sideways, his voice low and rough with exhaustion, or something else I couldn't name. I shrugged, trying to appear unaffected, even as every nerve in my body screamed. "I've been in worse situations." "Like what?" he teased. "Like sharing a bathtub with you when we were 4 because Mom thought it was efficient." He barked a laugh, the sound vibrating through the narrow space between us. "Hey, I was adorable. You're the one who dumped half a bottle of shampoo on my head. Only because you wouldn't stop splashing." We slipped into silence again. the kind that felt charged, like the air before a storm breaks. I stared up at the low wooden ceiling, counting the knots in the wood, willing my heartbeat to slow down. His hand brushed against my side, deliberate or accidental, I couldn't tell. I sucked in a breath so quiet I prayed he didn't notice. "You're tense," he murmured. Turned my head slightly, finding him already looking at me in the dim firelight. His eyes were impossibly soft, his expression open in a way he rarely let anyone see. "Cold," I lied. Without hesitation, he shifted closer, pressing his body fully against mine. His arm wrapped loosely over my waist, casual, like it was nothing. Like it didn't set every inch of me on fire. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. This wasn't new, technically. We'd fallen asleep next to each other 100 times before, on long car rides, during movie marathons, camping trips. But it had never felt like this. Never so electric, so precarious, like one wrong move would shatter whatever delicate balance we were clinging to. His fingers drummed lightly against my side in a slow, absent rhythm. My shirt rode up slightly, and the pads of his fingers brushed my bare skin. I stiffened, my body betraying me again. He noticed. His fingers stilled, resting there, warm and steady. Neither of us said anything. The rain kept falling, an endless white noise around us. In the dark, with nothing left to hide behind, the feelings I'd spent years shoving down clawed their way to the surface. I wanted to roll into him, press my face into the curve of his neck and stay there until the rest of the world faded away. I wanted to memorize the way he smelled, like rain, wood smoke, and something distinctly him. I wanted to be selfish just once and hold on too tightly, but fear rooted me in place. Fear of ruining everything we had. Fear that once I crossed that invisible line I wouldn't be able to go back. "You're really quiet," he said softly, voice barely audible over the rain. I swallowed hard. "Just thinking." He shifted again, resting, his forehead lightly against the side of my head, his breath ghosting warm across my temple. "About what?" "You. Always you." Instead I said, "Tomorrow, the drive back." He hummed, a low sound in his throat. "Wish we had more time." The way he said it, low, raw, made my heart ache. Like he wasn't just talking about the trip. I turned my face slightly, enough that I could see him. His eyes were so close, so open, reflecting the firelight in soft, golden hues. Without thinking, my hand moved, brushing lightly against his wrist where it rested against my stomach. He didn't pull away. If anything, his fingers curled instinctively, holding me there. The world outside could have crumbled, and I wouldn't have noticed. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then closed it again, biting his lower lip in a way that made my heart stutter painfully against my ribs. I almost said it right then, almost let it spill out in a broken whisper. "I love you. I always have." But the words got stuck somewhere deep inside, tangled up in fear and longing. Instead, I just lay there, feeling every slow beat of his heart against my side, knowing that if he stayed close enough, long enough, I might just find the courage to say it after all. It should have been easy to fall asleep like that, warm, wrapped up against him, the rain weaving its lullaby. But my mind was a storm of its own, louder than the weather outside, pulling me further and further from anything like peace. He shifted. Again, his hand moving slightly up my side, and every brush of his fingers felt deliberate now, like he was testing some invisible boundary neither of us had dared acknowledge until now. "Hey," he murmured, voice rough with tiredness, but laced with something more. I turned my head toward him without thinking. His nose was practically brushing mine. His breath warmed my cheek. "Yeah?" I whispered back, my voice cracking embarrassingly. He hesitated. I saw it in the slight furrow of his brow, the way his hand tightened minutely on my hip like he was grounding himself. His eyes, usually so bright and teasing, were serious in the half-light, vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache. He let out a breathless chuckle, half frustrated with himself. Never mind. I reached out before I could stop myself, curling my fingers gently around his wrist. "No," I said, heart pounding against my ribs. "Say it." He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was memorizing every line. Then he swallowed thickly, his Adam's apple bobbing. "It's stupid," he said finally, voice low, almost a rasp. "I keep thinking about how this is gonna end. Us, here, back to normal tomorrow, like none of this happened." The words hit something deep inside me. I tightened my grip on his wrist unconsciously. "It doesn't have to," I said, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. He searched my face again, his gaze flickering down to my mouth for the briefest second before darting back up. "You don't get it," he whispered, voice cracking slightly. "I don't want it to go back. I want—" He stopped, biting down on the inside of his cheek like the words physically hurt to hold back. My heart was beating so loud I was sure he could hear it. "What do you want?" I asked, so quietly the words barely made it past my lips. Another beat of silence, another war inside his eyes. Then finally, he exhaled, the sound broken and fragile. "You," he said. One word, one tiny, impossible word that shattered the world I'd been clinging to. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. My fingers were still tangled in the fabric of his sleeve, holding on like it was the only real thing in the world. "You," he repeated, softer now. "I want you." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. And suddenly everything, the touches, the glances, the lingering good nights, the way he always looked back just one more time when he thought I wasn't watching. All of it made blinding, aching sense. My throat closed up. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, gathering the broken pieces of myself. When I opened them again, he was still there. Still waiting. Still holding his breath like he thought I might run. "I've wanted you," I whispered, for longer than I even knew how to admit. His hand slid up slowly, hesitantly, fingers brushing my jaw, tipping my face toward him. His touch was feather-light, as if he was giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. He let out a shaky breath, and then, so slowly it felt like the world had slowed to match, he leaned in, his forehead pressing lightly against mine. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. Just the soft, aching weight of him, close enough that I could feel the tremble in his body. "You scare the hell out of me," he admitted, voice barely more than a breath. "Because this—" His fingers traced a slow, nervous line down my jaw. "This means everything to me." Tears pricked the back of my eyes, stupid and unbidden. "I don't want to lose you," I said hoarsely. "You won't," he said, a raw conviction in his voice that made something inside me break and heal at the same time. "You couldn't, even if you tried." I didn't know who moved first. Maybe we moved together. But the next thing I knew, our mouths brushed, tentative, searching, almost reverent. It wasn't the way I'd imagined our first kiss in my daydreams, wild, heated, desperate. No, it was something far quieter, something deeper. A slow, uncertain meeting of lips, a shared breath, a question asked and answered in the smallest of movements. His hand slid into my hair, fingers threading through the strands as he tilted, his head deepening the kiss fractionally. My heart thundered against my ribs, but I didn't care. I leaned into him, into the dizzying, overwhelming rightness of it all. When we finally broke apart, we stayed close, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other in like we could survive on nothing else. "I should have said something sooner," he murmured, thumb brushing back and forth across my cheekbone. I smiled, a shaky, tearful thing that felt more real than anything I'd ever worn before. "We're idiots," I said with a watery laugh. He chuckled, too, the sound full of relief and wonder. The biggest. We lay there for a while, not talking, not needing to. Just breathing, touching, existing in the tiny, perfect space we'd carved out of the world. Eventually he shifted, pulling me fully against him, wrapping his arms around me like he was afraid I might disappear. I buried my face in the crook of his neck, breathing in his scent, letting it anchor me. "I don't know what happens next," I admitted quietly against his skin. "Me either," he said. "But I know I want to figure it out. With you." He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes again, brushing a strand of hair off my forehead with a touch so tender it made my chest ache. "Tomorrow," he said, voice firm. "We start figuring it out. Together." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Together," I echoed. His smile, soft, genuine, a little scared, was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Then he leaned in, pressing another kiss to my forehead, slow and lingering, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe. Believe that this wasn't some fragile thing destined to shatter. Believe that maybe, just maybe love, real, terrifying, breathtaking love, was something we were brave enough to hold on to. Morning came slower than usual, like even the world outside was reluctant to pull us from the cocoon we'd built in the night. I woke up first, blinking against the pale gray light that filtered in through the fogged-up window. He was still asleep. His face relaxed in a way I rarely saw when he was awake, like all the defenses he wore so easily had finally slipped away. His arm was slung across my waist, our legs tangled under the shared blanket. I stayed still, just watching him breathe, memorizing the way the early light caught in the messy strands of his hair, the tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth, like he was dreaming something good. I could have stayed like that forever. Eventually, though, he stirred, a low, contented hum vibrating through his chest as he tightened his hold on me instinctively. "Morning," I whispered. He cracked one eye open, a slow, lazy grin spreading across his face. "Hey!" God, he looked so stupidly perfect like this, and it made my chest feel too full. For a few seconds, we just smiled at each other like idiots. Then he poked me lightly in the side, making me flinch. "Ow," I said, laughing under my breath. He smirked, entirely too pleased with himself. "That's for stealing the blanket." "Excuse me," I protested, squirming. "You're the one who hogged it." He shrugged, completely unapologetic. "Survival instincts. Can't blame a guy." I rolled my eyes, but before I could fire back, he leaned, and brushing his nose against mine in a soft, almost shy gesture. The teasing faded, replaced by something warmer, deeper. "I'm really glad you didn't run last night," he murmured. "Wasn't exactly tempted," I said, smiling so much it hurt. He sobered slightly, thumb tracing slow circles on my hip. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "Not of you. Just what this means for us." My heart twisted, but I understood. God, did I understand. "I know," I said. "It's not going to be easy. People might not get it. Hell, even we might screw it up sometimes." He huffed out a breath that was half a laugh, half a sigh. "We definitely will. But," I continued, nudging his forehead with mine, "I want to try. With you." The look he gave me, open, raw, infinitely tender, was enough to wipe away every doubt that had ever lived in my chest. "Me too," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I want all of it. With you." For a while, we just lay there, wrapped around each other, letting the silence say all the things we weren't ready to put into words yet. Eventually, Practical thoughts started to creep back in, unwelcome but necessary. "So," I said, voice light but tinged with nervousness, "do we tell people?" He groaned, burying his face in my neck. "Can we not think about that yet? I just want one day. Just us." I laughed, threading my fingers through his hair. "Okay. One day." He lifted his head enough to look at me, mischief flickering back into his eyes. "And after that, we can make a whole bunch of really bad plans." "Terrible ones," I agreed solemnly. "The worst," he said, grinning. "Like running away to open a food truck on the beach." I snorted. "We can't even cook." "Minor detail," he said, waving it off. "Love conquers all." I shook my head, laughing, but inside, a warm, almost giddy feeling bloomed. This was real, messy, terrifying. Completely imperfect, but real, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I just felt right. He tugged me closer again, his smile softening. "Whatever happens," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "I'm not letting you go." I pressed my forehead to his, closing my eyes. "Good," I breathed, "because I'm not letting you go either." Outside, the rain had stopped. The world was waking up, washed clean, and inside, tangled together under a threadbare blanket, we were just beginning. By mid-morning, the storm had finally broken, leaving the world outside washed in a soft, silver light. The roads were still a mess of puddles and fallen branches, but somehow everything felt lighter, brighter, like we weren't the same people
who had driven into the rain the night before. He rummaged around the car, tossing me an energy bar with a dramatic flourish. "Breakfast of champions," he said, grinning. I caught it one-handed and gave him a mock salute. "Truly we're living."
The dream. He plopped down next to me on the hood of the car, our shoulders brushing. Neither of us pulled away. The easy closeness that had always existed between us was still there. But now it was charged with something new, something fragile and precious. We sat in comfortable silence, sharing bites of the pathetic granola bar and watching the mist rise, off the asphalt like smoke. At some point he nudged my knee with his. "You know," he said, his voice casual but his fingers twitching nervously against his jeans. "We could take the long way home." I raised an eyebrow. "The long way?" He shrugged, a small, hopeful smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, maybe stop somewhere. Spend a couple of days. Just us." My heart squeezed. The idea of extending this magic we had somehow stumbled into, was so tempting it hurt. "You serious?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and whatever he saw in my face must have given him the courage to push forward. "As serious as I've ever been about anything." I let out a slow breath, feeling something uncoil inside me. Yeah, okay, let's do it." His smile lit up his whole face, and in that moment, I knew, no matter how complicated things got, no matter how messy or hard, it would be worth it. He pulled out his phone, fiddling with the GPS with a determined look. As he leaned in, I caught a whiff of his cologne, something clean and familiar, and without thinking, I reached over and laced my fingers through his. He froze for a second, glancing down at our joined hands, then up at me. A soft, crooked grin bloomed on his face, and he squeezed my hand once, firmly. It was such a small thing, just a handhold, just two fingers finding each other in a chaotic world. But to me, it felt monumental, like a promise. We didn't say anything about it. Didn't need to. Instead, we laughed over stupid directions and argued about which small-town diner had the best pancakes, the way we always had. But now, under it all, there was a thrum of something deeper, something permanent. Every glance, every brush of skin, Every shared smile carried weight now. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely overwhelming, and I wouldn't have traded it for anything. As we pulled back onto the road, he glanced over at me, his expression soft, almost shy. "You know," he said, voice light but edged with something real. "We're probably going to screw this up at some point." I laughed. "Definitely." He nodded, mock serious. "Disaster is inevitable." "But," I said, reaching over to ruffle his hair, something I knew he hated but secretly loved, "we'll figure it out. Together." He caught my hand, pressed a quick kiss to my knuckles before dropping it back into my lap, his cheeks flushing a soft pink. "Together," he echoed, grinning like he couldn't quite believe this was real either. The tires splashed through puddles as we drove into the rising sun, the road unfurling ahead of us in endless, shining ribbons. The future was terrifying, uncertain, and vast. But with him by my side, it didn't feel so scary anymore. It felt like an adventure waiting to happen, and for the first time in my life, I was ready for it.